Have you ever heard the term knowledge is power? Have you ever considered the fact that that's not actually true? Today, I'm going to challenge this statement after having read over 100 books within the last 5 years and accumulating a lot of information. And here's what I learned: knowledge alone is not power, it actually acts codependently with something else, which I'm going to bring up shortly. But this came to me after reading Myron Golden's Boss Moves books. Learning faster is the equivalent to earning faster. And when I thought about how I can learn any faster, it brought me back to the time where I accumulated all of this information and then thought about it 5 years later. I actually have nothing to show for it. In fact, I can barely remember all 50 books. I mean, sure, I remember a handful of those books, maybe even some of the authors' names, and maybe can even somewhat quote what some of those authors said, especially if it resonated with me. But for the most part, nothing. Nothing has come of it, especially any earnings. And so I thought, maybe knowledge alone actually is not power by itself. There has to be a missing piece. And coming across this section inside of Myron Golden's Boss Moves book, Business Optimization Success Secrets from $1 Million Roundtable, I was surprised that Myron actually brought up this conversation and answered a lot of questions for me. He actually speaks about wisdom and the 4 steps or stages rather of wisdom that actually turns knowledge into power. Before these 4 steps, knowledge is nothing but a bunch of information that we hold within our minds and never use it. And you might have heard this saying, which I believe to be true: if you don't use it, you lose it. And so, today we're going to talk about the 4 steps of wisdom and how that equates directly to generating more revenue or earning more money or whatever rewards and incentives that you want. So, the very first step is actually called ignorance. Ignorance is the first stage of wisdom. What we don't know, right? You might have also heard that phrase before too, which is true. You don't know what you don't know. There's plenty of languages that we don't know, or maybe you don't know how to change the engine inside of a car, or to maybe even just bake cookies, right? You don't know what you don't know. But we live in a world where we have information at our fingertips. I mean, you could Google right now how to do any one of those things and find a way to do it yourself step by step. So that's amazing. But realize what I said. There is a point of awareness that needs to happen in order to no longer be ignorant. The very first stage of wisdom is ignorance. And then we realize that we need information. So then it moves us onto the next level, which is awareness. Once we become aware that we don't know of something or know about something, it gives us the opportunity to learn. Which brings us to the next stage of wisdom, which is knowledge. You don't know something, but you know that you want to know something, right? Or maybe you need to know something. And so we come to knowledge. This is where we accumulate information about a thing. But think about it. Maybe you've also had this experience growing up as a kid in school. They gave us these thick old textbooks, and we had to read several pages within one chapter. And then you'd possibly be tested on this chapter by the end of it. And you had no idea what questions were going to be on this test, right? And so you would try your best to go somewhere in your mind to recall all of the information that you learned within this chapter so that you could answer that question correctly. But we never actually learned the things in the chapter. Most test takers are pulling their recall from memorization, right? We memorized as we studied each section of the chapters. We began to find ways to memorize it so that when it came to the test, we were able to pick out keywords from the question in order to answer that question, right? And then what happens? You pass the test, you fail the test. That's neither here nor there. My point being is, think about your first 8 years of school. What did you actually learn? You might be able to actually recall a few things, but you certainly can't recall everything. Why? Because knowledge is only an accumulation of information. Our mind only has but so much capacity to memorize and recall things. And to be quite fair to the mind, it really actually is impressed by feeling. And so if you are not feeling really deeply about the information that you're learning during the stage of knowledge, chances are is that you're going to lose this information over time, especially if you're not using it, because if we don't use it, we lose it. So knowledge is nothing more than the accumulation of information at a point in time. However, it's still a part of the 4 stages of wisdom. So now that we're aware that we want to learn a thing or need to learn a thing, we learn the thing. We learn the thing by actually accumulating information about it. So now that we started to accumulate that information, that moves us to the next stage of wisdom, which is understanding. Now, what's really important is that something that is critical for you to learn, that you're not just memorizing it. We want to understand it. We want to have full comprehension of how these things take place. So imagine running a business, but you have no idea how to actually sell your product or your service. If you do not understand sales, guess what's likely to happen to your business? It's likely that it's going to collapse and fall through, because if you don't have any sales, you don't have any business, right? Business is upheld by transactions. You absolutely need to have sales in your business. So if you don't understand how to produce sales and generate revenue and income, your business is going to fail, right? Even for me, as a fitness instructor, right? I've accumulated a lot of information in order to certify myself as a personal trainer, as a Group X instructor, etc. Okay? But if I didn't understand how to use that information, then it's pretty much worthless. I also had a very thick textbook to read through with plenty of chapters, and I also had to take a test at the end of that, right? So I accumulated a lot of information. But what was most important was what happened after my exam, after being certified. I started to run my own business. And so to take on clients, I actually have to understand how to now use that information that I accumulated and help someone with that information, right? Because that's their expectation, is that they pay me to help them transform. So out of understanding, it's not just having the information, it's actually applying that information. Understanding the way that something works. Information is required, sure, but you actually need to apply it. That's because we need to know for ourselves that this thing is true. This is what scientists spend all of their professions and careers doing, is testing falsities and truths, right? That's all scientists do. They spend their time testing and experimenting to see what is true and what is false, right? They want to be able to have a yes or no. And if there's any ambiguity, it's a no. And we keep testing, right? So we continue to apply until we can make a sound decision on an outcome based on the facts or the statistics and the amount of times that we experimented with the thing. So, easy enough. That leads us to our fourth stage, which in itself is wisdom. Wisdom cannot happen without the rest of these stages, which means that wisdom is actually the power, because we finally put it in action. The accumulation of knowledge, just knowing a lot about a little bit of everything or knowing a little bit about a lot of things, does not necessarily make you powerful. Okay? Power comes from the ability to do, which is our action. It comes from the experience that we have, right? That's where wisdom comes in. We cannot have wisdom without the experience, and we don't have the experience without having applied it for ourselves, which means that we put it into action. So therefore, knowledge is not power by itself. It does not work independently without wisdom. It does not work independently without experience. I literally just finished getting an additional certification in TRX suspension, okay? And it was very challenging to learn, accumulate all this information, especially without understanding. In fact, we did not leave the session until we understood it, until we were able to comprehend it. We actually had to apply it during the session as a part of the certification. It's the same way as taking an exam, even though there was an exam that came at the end of that. Okay? The course itself required for us to apply the knowledge that we were learning after awareness. So even to take the course, it was required to have the TRX suspension straps in front of us. We had to demonstrate most of the steps that were a part of our modules. We had to apply it for ourselves so that we are able to teach it to someone else. Teaching is the action, okay? But we at least had to do it for ourselves first. We have to apply what we're learning in order to be wise about it, to say what works, what doesn't work, what hurts, what doesn't hurt, what's okay, what's not okay, what's right or what's wrong, what's worse, what's best, right? And we can only do this for sure by learning it ourselves. Here's one thing that always sticks out to me is, as when we're kids or when you have kids, if you're just around children, our job as adults is to keep them safe because they don't have this yet. They don't have wisdom. They don't have the experience, right? I actually want to write that word in here because I think that's actually important. So power and action, aka experience, right? So kids don't have experience yet. That's why it's so important for them to have guides to protect them and to teach them, okay? So because they don't have experience, but we do, we get to teach them. Now, here's the thing, is that even though we're teaching them, we still had to have our own experience of what we're protecting them from, right? That's why parents or guardians are known as their protectors, is because there is a level of wisdom that they have in order to be able to do that. So think about a kid who's playing with the knobs on a stove, right? What are you gonna tell that kid? Don't touch that. When you play with fire, you get, come on, say it with me, you get burned, right? And we might hear that. We've heard that as kids, and we can say that to a kid, but there's no experience in that. There is nothing quite like feeling fire on your skin yourself. not because someone told you about it, not because someone shared their own experience about it. Even so, there is nothing like experiencing that for yourself, right? Has anyone ever been burned before? I mean, my gosh, have you ever fell and hurt yourself before? There's nothing quite like the experience that you get to feel in your own body, much less that you get to talk about as a part of the knowledge that you have on it, the information that you have about it. You can say it because you know it, but you can also say it because you've done it. And this is important. And so, why do I talk about any of this? Because Myron says, wisdom is the application of truth. And this is why I started this conversation with saying, is it actually true that knowledge is power? I don't think so. In my experience, that's not the case. I've accumulated a lot of information and forgotten most of it and have done nothing with it, so much so that I have not earned much of what I thought I would earn, aside from a lot of knowledge. And Myron says here that the faster you learn, the faster you earn. So if learning is not just the accumulation of information, there has to be more. And the more is the wisdom. Wisdom is the application of truth. Wisdom is not just knowing what to do, but it's knowing how to do it and then actually doing what you now know. So we want to learn about one thing. Okay, I want you to choose one thing for 2026. Drop it down in the comment box below. What's the one thing that you're going to focus on for 2026? Just one, y'all. You're going to learn about that thing. You're going to learn how to do it. So don't choose something that you just want to know about just because. Choose something that's going to take you to the next level. Choose something that's going to generate more revenue for you and put more cash in your pocket. Or at least choose something that's going to bring someone else more value. Learn about a thing. Learn how to do the thing. And then go out and do the thing. Those are the 3 steps to actually learn something, is doing it. If you're a student and watching this, you need to understand that whatever you're studying, you need to go out and do the thing. Your diploma alone is just showcasing this, the second stage of wisdom. It's not actually showing your experience. And this is often what students have a problem with after they get out of school. They go to school to learn about a thing and how to do the thing, but then they can't get a job about the very thing that they learned and how to do it because they don't have what? Experience. This is why internships are so important and valuable while you're in school. Okay, so if I have any students watching, please keep this in mind. Internships are really valuable because that's what provides you with experience, right? That's what gives you wisdom, and that's what companies want to hire. They want to hire wise people, not just a bunch of know-it-alls, okay? So this is not about IQ, which is great, okay? IQ is not the most valuable asset. So if there's someone else that's smarter than you, it doesn't even matter. Like, there's no comparison to experience, right? If my car has a flat tire on the side of the road, if someone pulls over to help me, I'm really hoping that they know how to change a flat tire. It's valuable for me because I don't know how to change a flat tire. But if someone else pulls over and says, hey, do you need help changing the flat? The first thing I'm not going to say is, well, do you have a diploma or a certificate changing flat tires? I'm not going to find out whether they're a mechanic first, right? If they have a jack in their car, if they have that big old 4-arrow wrench looking thing, I'm going to assume that they've changed a couple flats in their lifetime. If they have the tools in their trunk and they're ready to help, I'm going to assume that they have experience and that they know how to do the thing just because they already have the tools. And even if they didn't, even if I was the first experience, at least they're willing to help. And I know that they've at least accumulated the information and how to do it. I say all this to say, choose one thing, y'all, for 2026. Just one. Focus on learning how to do that one thing. And then do it and stick with it for the rest of the year. So much so that you can say that you have X amount of time and experience doing this thing over and over and over again, because then that means that you have value that other people need. That means that you have solutions to other people's problems. And guess what people are willing to pay you for? Your solutions. People are willing to pay you money in exchange for your experience, aka your wisdom. And with that being said, my friends, I hope that this message has given you some insight. Drop what you've learned down in the comments below. What stage of wisdom are you in? What are you going to learn completely? A full transaction of learning, y'all, which is all of these stages, okay? Learning is all of these stages. 4 stages of learning. 4 stages of wisdom is 4 stages of learning. And then make sure that you subscribe to this channel, hit the notification bell so that you know when I drop more content like this. Yes, but more importantly, so that I can follow up and we could be a part of community and hold each other accountable to the things that we're learning in 2026. Peace.